Older men declare war, but it is youth that must fight and die.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Episode 9 of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. I am so happy that we finally got some answers in the penultimate episode of this season. We finally know why Shaw looks so young and why Bill really went crazy. And with Keiko popping up at the end, we've got so much to talk about, so let's get into it. We open on young Hiroshi playing with his toy plane. Now, the number 5 is written on the side, which is fitting since Monarch is the 5th live-action work in the Monsterverse. So it turns out that Bill and Shaw were relatively open with Hiroshi about their work.
You know that it's top secret Army Explorer stuff, right?
Even if they couldn't tell him the details. I bet that's why Hiroshi didn't tell his own kids. You can see here that he's worried about his uncle.
Is it dangerous?
Even if Hiroshi couldn't protect Kate and Kentaro from losing him, he could protect them from the anxiety by keeping his job a secret. Shaw gives Hiro his pocket knife. This is actually a Higanokami knife, which is a very popular knife brand in Japan, so my guess is that Shaw originally got it from Keiko. And, as we see in episode 4, this is actually the same knife that Hiroshi uses to sharpen his pencils. But person, I thought Hiroshi gave it back to Shaw at the end of the episode. Well, last episode Shaw said eventually Hiroshi came around to his ideas. I bet he gave it back to him in some sentimental keep it, it's yours now moment.
I gave it to you, it's yours now.
So, they're smack dab in the middle of the US in Kansas. Now, Kansas is actually home to the baseball team, the Kansas City Monarchs, which is also the team logo on the hat that Bill found in the Loudon. Above the entrance to Hollow Earth, there's a gamma ray simulator, but it's quite a step up from the one that we saw in Hatteruma. Shaw says,
No, I'm not going to ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
Which has been his ethos for this entire show. He might do some crazy things, but he always leads the charge. Pucket walks on the scene and says,
The moon's a decade away. 2, if we do it right.
Now, we landed on the moon in 1969.
Or did we?
So he was a bit off on how long that would take, but notice that he said it's 2 decades away if we do it right. When Shaw wakes up 2 decades later, the first news he sees is of a rocket launch. There are 4 helmets reading Hest, Burke, Brandt, and Shaw. Other than Shaw, we've never seen any of these names before, but there is a ship called the Arleigh Burke class destroyer that helped track the Muto in Godzilla. Pucket calls the mission Operation Hourglass. Now, normally operation names are supposed to be meaningless so that the people outside of the operation can't figure out what the military is doing. But I think this one's called Hourglass because if you rotate the Monarch symbol, it's the exact same shape as an hourglass. Everybody lines up to watch, and standing next to Bill is Dr. Suzuki. Now, we met him a couple episodes ago, and he's actually the original creator of the gamma ray simulator.
This lunatic made Titan, babe.
Also, notice how Puckett's picked up some of the Monarch talking points.
This mission is a matter of global security.
We are trying to safeguard the world.
And then we finally figure out how Shaw went to Hollow Earth without the HEAVs. So they phrased the problem a bit differently here than they did in Godzilla vs. Kong.
The tunnel is too unstable.
When they try to enter, they hit a gravitational inversion. A whole planet's worth of gravity reversed in a split second.
But long story short, if they ride in with the Titan, they don't experience the gravity reversal. They use the gamma ray simulator to lure up the Titan, and it's Bill's old foe, the Loudon Dragon.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
You can tell because the picture on the imaging device looks exactly like the Loudon Dragon when it opens its mouth. Notice how when the Titan comes up, the tunnel starts to glow with this blue and orange energy. That explains why Shaw took one look at the rift in Alaska and knew it was active. When Shaw and his crew drop into the tunnel, this vortex starts, and it's just like the vortex that we saw when Shaw closed the rift.
But why? They didn't close the tunnel in Kansas.
Well, I think the vortex isn't caused by the tunnel closing, but rather its gravitational pull. The reason these Titans can withstand the gravity reversal is because they have a large gravity pull themselves. So, when they disappear into these tunnels, their own gravity will pull things in around them, kind of like a whirlpool or a black hole. We've never seen it happen on land before, but Godzilla causes a whirlpool when he emerges in King of the Monsters. We cut to Kentaro, who is alive and not so well in Tokyo.
And there's Tim.
Yep, our guy Tim cannot die.
And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Director Verdugo tells Kentaro that Kate, May, and Shaw died, and he says,
They're my family.
Notice that he says they. His family isn't just his biological sister Kate, but also his adopted great uncle and May. Everything they've been through has made them family, blood related or not. We cut to Shaw, who wakes up inside Hollow Earth. Now notice that the lights in the background are the same color as the lights that we saw come out of the tunnels. And then we cut to May, who is basically tripping. Shaw says that the electrical field's affecting her vision, but I'm curious if it could also be the radiation. All the other rift sites are having radiation spikes, so there's probably a spike here as well. Gamma radiation is on the light spectrum, but we cannot see it. Now I wonder if being in Hollow Earth affects the eye in a way where they can see more of the light spectrum. We cut to Bill Randa back in 1962, who's still working out of the same basement office. You can tell just by the look of him that he is not handling Shaw's disappearance very well. Now that's really interesting because everyone keeps saying that he went crazy after Keiko died, but if we look back at the beginning, he was still doing fine. He missed her, but nothing here suggests that he has lost it. People still respect him and his theories, but once he loses both of them, he starts to turn into that crazy guy that people talk about.
Started pushing all these theories about teleportation and wormholes, real tinfoil hat type of stuff.
Shaw's disappearance also explains why Bill was so obsessed with the Hollow Earth theory. Keiko's death was heartbreaking, but it wasn't a mystery. Weird big titans got a hold of her and dragged her down. But Bill doesn't know what happened to Shaw, so he spends the rest of his life trying to prove the Hollow Earth theory to explain it. General Pucket tells Bill that the US government pulled Monarch's funding. Now, clearly the organization lives on, but we don't yet know how.
Peter, how are you doing that?
I don't know, Lois. I'm scared.
I think next episode, Bill finds something in his own studies that interests the government enough to give them just enough funding to stay alive. Now, we know that they still don't have a lot of money because in Kong, Bill has to pull some personal strings to get to Skull Island.
Listen, Senator Landsat is sending a mission to the island. We could piggyback on that operation. With your permission, of course.
But my guess is that the discovery of Kong prompted the government to put a lot more money into the organization. That's why the Monarch facilities look so nice in the 1980s. After General Pucket tells Bill that Monarch's funding has been cut, Bill says,
I can't let it go, Puck.
And this is such a turn from how we've seen them interact in previous episodes. Up until now, they've always been adversaries, but now Bill is calling him by a nickname. It goes to prove that Shaw's choice to tell Pucket about Godzilla was correct. It increased Pucket's trust in the organization and allowed them to have a better working relationship. Pucket says,
Your boy's already lost a mother, now an uncle. Do not take his father away too.
Now, Monarch does lead to Bill's death in 1973, but I don't think Pucket's talking about literal death. I think Pucket is warning him against obsession and telling him to remain present in Hiroshi's life instead of becoming absent in search of answers. But Bill doesn't heed his warnings and becomes an absentee father after this point. We know because the series opens with this video that he recorded for Hiroshi while he was on Skull Island.
It'll probably mean I'm dead, which you may not feel too busted up about. You may never forgive me for what I took from you, and I can't go back in time and fix all the mistakes I made.
Now we cut to Shaw waking up in a containment bubble after returning from Hollow Earth, and one of the people who monitors him is actually Kentaro's mother, Emiko. Also, Shaw has become literally radioactive from his time in Hollow Earth. We hear the Geiger counters going off here. After days of asking for Bill Randa, Shaw takes Emiko hostage, only to discover that not only is Bill dead, but Hiroshi is all grown up.
What? Wait, so that's how Hiroshi and Emiko meet?
Yep, and it also explains why Emiko was so calm about everything earlier in the series. Notice that Hiroshi says that they're in a Monarch facility, so Emiko knew about Monarch's existence, and even if she didn't know exactly what they'd studied, she probably knew that it was something weird. Emiko asks if Hiroshi will talk to Bill, and he says, Now, like I've said before, this show deals a lot with generational trauma, and this is a perfect example of that. Shaw should not be Hiroshi's responsibility. He was literally a child when he disappeared, but Hiroshi inherited that responsibility from his father, whether it's because he stepped into his father's role at Monarch when he died, or because he still feels a sense of familial obligation. Hiroshi is forced to deal with problems given to him by his parents. So we cut back to 2015 Japan to the apartment Kentaro shares with his mother. Now, Kentaro is the sibling dealing with survivor's guilt. Remember, at the beginning of the series, Kate had survivor's guilt from G-Day. She was escorting children from her school and was stuck on the bridge when Godzilla attacked and broke the bridge in two. She jumped out to help kids off the bus, but fell off the bridge just as she stepped off. In many ways, Kentaro is dealing with the same traumas that Kate has already gone through. Hiroshi abandoned Kate after G-Day, and then Hiroshi abandoned Kentaro in Algeria. Kate watched people die in a Titan attack in San Francisco, and then Kentaro watches his family die in a Titan attack in Kazakhstan. It's like he did a speed run through trauma just to catch up with his older sister.
Gotta go fast.
We cut to the Monarch headquarters in Virginia. Now in this map, we can see that the gamma levels are spiking at every active rift site. Remember, gamma radiation was already nearly at G-Day levels before the bomb in Kazakhstan. Right now, conditions are perfect for another emergence. Barnes is listening to No Frauds by Nicki Minaj, Drake, and Lil Wayne. It's a little bit of a continuity error because No Frauds came out in 2017 and this show is set in 2015. But hey, it's a good song, we're gonna let it slide. Barnes realizes that the gamma radiation is actually a signal.
It's a message. Somebody's sending us a message.
But who would broadcast a signal from Hollow Earth?
So, remember in King of the Monsters when King Ghidorah awoke all of the other Titans and called them to Boston? Clearly, these Titans have a way to communicate. We know one way they communicate is sound because of the Orca device in King of the Monsters, but they could also communicate with each other using radiation. All of these Titans are hypersensitive to it, so it's probably something they all notice and understand. So I think a Titan realizes their habitat is in danger and he's waking up all the other Titans to protect it. And since Godzilla is the alpha, my guess is that Godzilla himself is sending out the signal. We cut to Shaw and Hiroshi in 1982. Hiroshi says Monarch just wants to know what happened to him, and together they quote Bill's signature catchphrase.
Defies logic. And beyond logic lies truth.
Shaw recounts what happened, and we get this awesome shot of their sphere falling through the tunnel while they see the Loudon Dragon out of the window. So Shaw and his crew land in this place that's before Hollow Earth, almost like the upper crust. It's rocky, it's dark, and it barely has any plant life. And then we see the dragon in its full glory, and I love how they filmed this. He looks so terrifying, and the slow motion means that we really get to see every detail on his face and teeth. And then this portal opens up. Now, this could just be a wormhole, but I feel like it might be how the Titans access actual Hollow Earth. This rocky, desolate Hollow Earth is not the same one that we saw in Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, it might just be a different part, but I think the portal is how they get from the tunnels to the whole Hollow Earth ecosystem. Hiroshi says,
They found you in the woods outside of Higashizumo. They said it's the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead.
So this perfectly exemplifies the brilliance in Bill Randa's way of thinking. Remember, all the way back in episode 2, he said,
I think you should be following the stories, folklore, legends.
He viewed monster hunting as an anthropological study just as much as a scientific study. And it segues into the fact that Bill was right about everything. Everyone thought he was crazy, including his own son, but in reality, he was the smartest person in the room. Then it's revealed that Shaw was, in fact, put into the retirement home as soon as he came out of Hollow Earth. So he was there for more than 30 years before he escaped with Kate, Kentaro, and May. Shaw tries to convince Hiroshi to work with him, but Hiroshi says,
300,000 years from the cradle of civilization to the moon. We lived with the Titans until you were 3.
And I think this is the reason that Shaw is closing all the rifts. He thinks they're responsible for all of the Titan emergences. Now, that's not true. In this universe, monster legend is as much fact as it is fiction, meaning the Titans have always existed alongside humans. Also, we know the radiation from nuclear bombs lured Titans to the surface. But Shaw is guided by feelings rather than facts. Remember, last week, Shaw said it was all about belief. If he believes it, that's all that matters. I think if he shuts the rifts, humanity and Titans will live in peace, but they will never interact. Just before Hiroshi leaves, he also says,
And it's that devoured my childhood wasn't madness. Then it was a choice. Maybe that makes it worse.
But it's so sad though, because that's exactly how his own kids feel about him. They both say that he was never there for them. And even though he knows the pain of losing family, he faked his own death to continue his monster hunting. He never broke the cycle. We get this quick shot of Shaw in the nursing home, and it turns out that Monarch wasn't just keeping him prisoner, but also drugging him. Also, we found out earlier in the season that this containment center opened in 1974, the year after the Kong expedition. So I think these two guys next to him were probably soldiers on that mission. We cut to Kentaro, who's going through his father's file when Hiroshi himself walks in. He says, which mirrors how he treated Kate's mom after G-Day. Now, I hope they give Hiroshi a really good motive for all of this in the finale, because he just seems like such a dirtbag here. He never even apologizes for his secret life or for leaving them for dead in the desert.
But he was so sad when he found out that Kate died.
Yeah, and I feel bad for him, but he made his own family go through the same emotions when he faked his death. It's not cool. And then, for the first time in this episode, we see Kate. Now, I'm not sure if she's in a different part of Hollow Earth than May or Shaw, or if it's just later in the day, but the sky behind her is this dusty orange and green instead of the bright blue we've seen everywhere else. And then we see this terrifying boar monster. He is covered in these branches and moss. He kind of reminded me of Methuselah, the Titan in Germany who looks like a giant forest, or even the Skur buffalo from Kong.
He looks really small for a Titan.
Well, not all the monsters are all these giant apex predators like Godzilla or Kong. A lot of these monsters are smaller creatures that are just part of the ecosystem. On Skull Island, there are a ton of different creatures ranging from massive to the size of a regular deer. And in Godzilla vs. Kong, we see creatures like the Hellhawks, which are big but still really small compared to Kong. strong. But then the boar creature gets taken down with an arrow by none other than Keiko. And just like Shaw when he was in Middle-earth, she hasn't aged a day. So I'm really looking forward to their reunion next episode. Something tells me that Keiko is not going to like Shaw's plans to close all the rifts. Well guys, big shout out to the writer of this video, Miss Brianna McLarty. You can find her social links below. So do you think that Keiko will approve? Do you think they'll find a way out? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments or add us on our socials. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.